What's up, everybody? I'm Reverend Nia.
I'm Minister Wallace.
My name is Reverend Tiff, and welcome to Millennial Conversations.
Millennial Conversations is a Bible study specifically for young adults where we teach through dialogue and have candid conversations from an emerging generation of leaders.
Be sure to repost and share with the hashtag RTMC. That means Read Temple Millennial Conversations. And don't forget to engage with us in the chat.
You can tune in to our Read Temple website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel every Thursday at 7 p.m. So grab your pens,
grab your notebooks,
and join us for tonight's rap session.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Millennial Conversations. We are so excited to see you all here this evening. Don't forget to repost, reshare with the hashtag RTMC, letting people know to come on and watch. Hopefully you all have been joining us this month as we discuss millennial leadership with some awesome millennial pastors. And so I'm gonna have them reintroduce themselves again, just in case you missed them the last time they were here. And hopefully you go back and you rewatch it, hear about the great things that they were talking about. And I'm going to shoot it to you.
What's up, Reverend Jazz from Macedonia AME Church in Accomack, Virginia.
Good evening, I am Pastor Tim from La Plata AME Church in La Plata, Maryland.
Well, thank you so much, you two, for joining us again this month. I'm excited to have you both here. And so, Pastor Tim, would you mind reading the scripture for me, please?
Of course.
For us.
Our scripture this evening comes from Daniel 3, the new NRSV. Chapter 3, verse 12. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These pay no heed to you, O king. They do not serve your gods, and they do not worship the golden statue that you have set up.
Just throw them under the bus like that. So the first question is, these leaders and their leader did not believe in the same way. Their theologies were vastly different. So let's discuss the challenges of effective leadership when the leaders are not on one accord. And so, Reverend Jazz, Pastor Jazz.
Yeah. I don't even know if you can really consider like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and then King Nebuchadnezzar on the same playing field in terms of a leader and their leaders. Because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego wasn't rocking with King Nebuchadnezzar at all.
Right.
And so I think you asked the question about what it looks like when the leader and their leaders are not on one accord. It depends on if we even fighting on the same team, and they weren't.
Right.
And so at that point, you can just go ahead and cancel any type of fruitful ministry, any type of fruitful work taking place. Y'all might be productive and y'all might get some things done, but it's not gonna be done in a spirited way.
Right.
It's not gonna be done in a way that produces over time, and that grows folk over time. And a large part of that in this particular text is a matter of not even, it's a political matter more than it's, more than anything else, a political matter. But I'm gonna leave that for like a later conversation because I'm sure it'll come up in some of the other questions.
It might come up right now because that's what I was thinking about.
Okay.
Pastor Tim. Reverend Tim.
So I had to learn the hard way with leadership myself, and having asked during an official board meeting or one of those official meetings that we have in the AME church, something that other people were scared to ask of my pastor. Mm-hmm. And he politely pulled me to the side after the service and said, after the meeting, you will be here one day. So I want you to remember that although what you may have asked was important, but it wasn't the right context or the right time to ask it. And I think that's some of the challenges that we do, is that we sometimes don't realize when we just need to shut up. And sometimes us as millennial leaders, we have to prove ourselves because we're not, we all know, we don't always get chosen to do things. People look at us and say, no, they're still too young. They don't know what they're doing. Don't give them the books. Don't give them the keys to the church. Don't give them the account numbers. Don't give them none of that. And we feel that we have something that we have to prove. So I think that with effective leadership, we have to learn. It's like a baby. You have to learn to crawl before you walk. And all leaders are not born. All leaders, sometimes you have to create and cultivate certain leaders to be who they are.
Yeah, I agree with that in some form or way. I think effective leadership, period, regardless of age, really requires discernment on when to say what or when not to say it, or when to ask a question, when to not ask a question. Like, I think if I was in that position of who that pastor was, I wouldn't have seen it that way. I would have been like, thank you for your question. I don't even know if that's a matter of a conversation of you going to be, I don't know what the question is, so I'm just assuming, right? But I don't know if I would have taken it from the perspective, you going to be in this position one day. You're right, and these are some of the questions that I might get. So I need to be paying attention to how I might respond based off of your example. But if the example you're giving me as my leader is more so of a, yeah, it just was not appropriate for this time. Those to me don't even go in the same conversation. What does that have to do with me one day being a pastor or potentially, how does that go together?
Because I think sometimes we have to ask those tough questions. Whether it's in the right context or not, I think it's all in the delivery of how you ask it.
Yeah.
And some people, I guess, it's probably the embarrassment or they're not prepared at that time. So they feel like, and now I gotta get you together because you tried to get me together.
And that's the crazy part, because effective leadership is a humble leader that can admit when, I don't know.
Yeah.
Instead of deflecting.
Instead of deflecting, it's okay to say, I don't know. I respect you more if you say, I don't know, I'll go back and get the answer and come back to you versus trying to shut the whole situation down because you were embarrassed, right? And so what are some other challenges? I want to go back to what you said, though, because you were talking about it. In this text in particular, one, people forget that Daniel was also a part of the narrative. Like, people just be trying to separate Daniel from the whole story, and you can't do that. But even in this context, like you were saying, it was very much political. We're talking about slavery and enslavement, forced leadership, right? And so based off of that, what does that look like in terms of the context that you're in terms of effective leadership? Can forced leadership be effective? And that's a question.
I was actually trying to think of our church on so many different levels. Like, I'm like, okay, on a particular, because the itinerancy low-key is forced leadership. Yeah. Like, you're appointed to a particular place, and the people have to have you, you know, regardless. However, we do have systems in place where if you a problem, the people can call up your boss and your boss's boss and let them know. I remember the bishop called me, I can't even remember, but it was a few months ago, a few months after I got to the church that I'm in, and he said, how are you enjoying it? Are you appreciating the experience? How are the people? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, well, everything is going well. I love them. I think they love me too. I hope they do. And he said, I know the people of Macedonia. They would call me if there was a problem. And I haven't heard, he's like, I haven't heard anything, so that's a good sign. And so on the one hand, it's like, in this ministry, it's forced leadership and it can work. But if it becomes a problem and it doesn't work, then there are avenues you can take. One thing that I will say, though, is that if you want to be an effective leader and you want to be an effective minister and you want to lead an effective ministry and a fruitful ministry, then you cannot force yourself on the people. It goes back to what I said in the last session that we had with Chania about the fact that when you are an itinerant minister and you are appointed to a particular space, that space doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the generations and the families that have been building that church across decades. And so you don't come into the house and begin rearranging the furniture and dictating who goes where and does what. You come into the house as a bill. They got to pay you to come preach on Sunday. They got to pay you to do Bible study. Ooh, so you come in, right, you come in as a liability until you build a rapport and you build a sense of trust so that nothing has to be forced because they already willing to follow you.
That's good. I don't got you got something to add, Tim?
You said it all.
We yield that to Jazz. Thank you. Thank you. And so the next question is, what are some suggestions on how to, wow, that word really jacked me up, on how to appropriately respond when those you lead are not in agreement with your decisions?
So I think you mentioned it when I gave my example of what happened to me, as far as you didn't take the question that way. You would have taken it as a different way. One, I think we can't wear our feelings on our sleeves.
That's good.
As leaders, as pastors, we're going to get the brunt of everything. And in this pastoral role, people will call on you, and they don't care that you have a family. They don't care that you have a job. They want you there at their beck and call. When their family member is dying or has died, they expect for you to call or to answer that call. And I feel like sometimes people don't understand that we are human.
Right.
And we're going to make mistakes. We're going to say some things that we should not say or that we should have kept in the back of our head, but we just can't wear our feelings on our sleeves. And I've had to learn the hard way about wearing my feelings on my sleeve.
Yeah, and I think it's also like having, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't like the word control, but I think it's having that discernment of what should be presented outwardly and what something should be held to yourself. But that's why it's also important to have a group that understands you so that you can share when you're having those moments of emotional that can't necessarily be reflected to the entire congregation, but you have a safe space where you can kind of work those things out.
I have been blessed to have a congregation that when they don't agree, they're gonna let me know that, but they also gonna yield to my leadership. That is not the case everywhere you go. But I have been blessed to have a congregation that trusts me enough to yield to my leadership, even when they can't see far enough ahead to say, you know what, I'm gonna definitely be on board with this, or this is something that I would choose to. So I will say I'm probably not the best person to go by because I've been spoiled a little teeny bit, but one thing that I do believe is that you nip these kind of issues in the bud when you allow people to have autonomy and you allow the congregation to be in on the decision-making process, and you allow them space to kind of navigate issues without you trying to dictate what the outcome should be all the time. So listen to the people first, I guess, would be my answer, and only make contrary decisions when it's absolutely necessary. Like there's something unsafe or it's gonna cost us too much money, it's gonna tank the church. Like those are the only times that you should be making a hard-lining decision that doesn't involve everybody else. Yeah. And I think that was a major issue in this text. The reason why this text unfolds the way it does is because you have a king who is trying to eliminate religious pluralism. He's trying to force a religion on a people who already had their own set of beliefs before he came into power. And so you're gonna have people that's gonna push back. Yeah. You're gonna have people that's gonna say, no thanks. I know you think you the king. I know you think you running things, but that's not how this gonna go.
Right.
So yeah, we nip it in the bud by allowing people their autonomy.
Right.
I think one thing, just to add on during the last segment, and you spoke of it again, this segment was about the vision and including the people in on the vision. And I think for us as leaders, when we come in, we're like, yeah, we want to hit the ground running. We want to do this. I got this church or I got this ministry, so I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then you get hit with a brick wall because the people are like,
Right.
We're used to doing it this way, and this is how we're going to do it. And I think what has failed a lot of our leaders is they did not include the members in on their vision. Okay, here's what I want to do. What do you all want to do? Then let's come and find a medium so that we can help this ministry to grow. I'm not gonna always be here. You're not gonna always be here, but I'm sure your family's gonna always be here. So let's find a medium that can help us all be on one accord.
Right, let's find some common ground. But I think as leaders too, we also have to be open to consideration, right? Like I think some leadership also has this mind that they know it all. And that they know everything. And that's just what's going to be. And it's, how do you expect to maintain community? Any other space you're in community in, people probably think you always right, but you always got that kind of community that's like, oh, no, no, no. But versus in the church space, some people project that onto their congregation, right? And it's like, you have to be open and willing to consideration, because church is not your grandma's house on Thanksgiving morning with your family and your friends. Church is not, well, actually.
Sometimes I feel like that, right?
Let me run that back. I'm talking about the church physical.
Okay.
Right? Because church is everywhere. I'm talking about church physical, like the edifice, right? And some would even argue that, right? Like even in the church edifice and space, what we do here and there, I think we have to just be cognizant about what we're presenting in each space and why we're presenting it. But I do believe a suggestion, and I will always stay by it, is always be open to consideration. Always hear everything out, and I think it's helpful to allow people autonomy and have a shared vision to walk that out together. So like, even if we have the same vision, we might not have the same pathway of how to get there. So let's identify the points of resistance, the points of tension, but let's also find the common ground, right? And maybe sometimes it's also like, I never considered that before. Or sometimes it's that's a good idea, but just not right now. And that's okay. And I think, I was about to get deep. Some people, when they ain't used to having control nowhere else,
they take it out at the church.
They take it out on the church.
Listen.
Next question. We can go there. If we come back around to it, we're going to talk about it. Some people ain't used to leading nowhere else, so they get up in the church and they think, this is my time. Okay? And it'd be like, whoa,
don't go there,
we still
Tiffany.
people that got regular lives outside of here. Don't do that. And we thank God for accountability in spaces to be able to check that, right? And so the third question is, considering the story of these young leaders, were they being defiant or standing up for what they believed was right? Where do we draw the line? This is a very interesting question, apart from the text. Because the background of this text is so different from this common shared ground of church space, right? So, anybody want to go? Anybody want to tackle this one?
Don't look this way.
Hey to the man, come on, Brother Timothy.
You know
Timothy.
what? Come on, tell him.
So the question, I'm gonna start with the first question. So no, they were not being defiant. They were being asked to worship an idol, a golden statue. First of all, they had their names changed.
Yes, they did. Talk about it.
Because they would not do what Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to do. And like you said, it was their form of slavery. And when we think about what our people had to go through, our people had their names changed, their languages stripped from them, and we had to learn this new culture of a way of living. And a lot of them, people would argue that they were being defiant. Well, when you take me out of what I've known, and force me into something that I don't know, I have to be defiant. And in this case, I wouldn't say that they were being defiant because let's just come back to that real quick. I'm gonna go over to jazz.
And these are one of those texts of tension.
It is. It really is.
Where we're looking at perspective differently. So I'm a.
Yeah. I think they were absolutely being defiant. I think they were also standing up for what they believed in, and so I think there's a both and taking place here, and I think that's okay. I think that we live in a culture where defiance and rebellion is frowned upon, which is why you have so many people, so I think it's frowned upon, which is why we struggle with this text so much in the word defiance so much, but as you mentioned, Tim, one thing that this question brought to mind for me in terms of the worshiping the idols, are our ancestors who were being asked to worship in ways that were unfamiliar to them, being asked to worship deities that were unfamiliar to them. And so what did they do? When they was in front of their slave master, they sang one song. And then they had the invisible institution where they sing their own songs and they worship in their own way. And in those spaces where they were, that were more private, they were also planning their rebellion. They were also planning their pushback. And so on one hand, they were compliant or giving the appearance of compliance. And on the other hand, they were planning their rebellion and planning their defiance. And I think that is an okay thing to do. It is the righteous thing to do. And I think more of us should be participating in that. I do not think that there are any boundaries or any lines drawn when we must push back against systemic oppression.
Listen, we could go all day about this. And you know what? The month is not over. We have another episode left. And so this conversation will continue. But let us know your thoughts in the comments about what has been discussed for the entirety of the month. And even for tonight, let us know your thoughts about whether you believe that they were being defiant or standing up, or both and, because both and does exist. If you are someone who was watching tonight and you are trying to figure out who are we talking about, who are these people in the Bible, you may have opened the Bible, read these stories, and you're still trying to just figure out where you're navigating. And if that's you, and if you're someone who needs salvation, please feel free to let us know in the chat. If you are someone who is seeking prayer, let us know in the comments and in the chat. And if you just want to join an awesome church and ministry, please feel free to let us know in the chat, or you can visit www.readtemple.org/cares. And also, if you love what's happening with this ministry and other ministries of this church, we have wonderful ministries doing amazing work, and you want to be a part of that, please feel free to sow a seed and follow the information on the screen ahead of you. You can give, you can text, you can call, or you can go to the website. We are so excited that you have joined us tonight. Next time, invite 5 more friends, invite your family, your friends, your peoples, the peoples in them, the people you don't even know. Just make sure you come back. We look forward to seeing you on another episode of Millennial Conversations. Have a good night.
Peace.